Hi, I am Dr. Tricia Pingel, and welcome to What Am I Modeling? Today, we're going to be talking about the concept of discipline versus freedom. Can you have both? My guest today, Jen Stevens, says absolutely you can. Now, Jen, if you are not familiar with her, is the author of the New York Times and USA Today bestseller, Fast, Feast, and Repeat. Now, she is not just a one-time author. She has also written the 28-day fast start day by day and Delay, Don't Deny, Living an Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle. She also wrote Cleanish, which is eat mostly clean, live mainly clean, and unlock your body's natural ability to self-clean. Jen lost over 80 pounds with an intermittent fasting lifestyle and has continued to keep it off. And she talks a lot about how to mix discipline and freedom in a diet culture where we are constantly being told to restrict. We can't keep up with those standards. This is why people fall off the wagon. They can't find the right diet for them. We're full of quick fixes. The perfectionism in us, the desire to live up to other people's standards, keeps us trying all these things and basically hindering our health and changing our metabolism by always moving the goalpost to the next challenge, to the next thing that's going to fix you. Jen and I are going to sit down and we're going to talk about discipline and we're going to talk about freedom and we're going to talk about what she did to completely change her life. Welcome to the show, Jen Stevens. Jen, I'm so excited. I haven't seen you in so long. I am so happy to have you here. How are you?
It's great to be here. Yeah, I guess it's been a year, just over a year since we've seen each other face to face.
Sad. And
yeah,
you're a celebrity. I'm so excited to have you here. I swear. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in the presence of Jen Stevens. And this conversation is going to be awesome. And before we dive in, because you have a lot of life, you have so many different layers of lessons to relay. Your stories are incredible. And I see so much value in this episode. So let's open up by saying, if we could just sum up the lessons that you have learned or been shown to over and over and over again into a few words, what would you say?
If I had to think about two words that exemplify, my journey and where I am right now, I think it would be the two words discipline and freedom. Because we find the freedom through the discipline. And I can explain more about that as we go, but
do it. Explain it. What do you mean? Tell me.
Well, I don't know if your listeners or viewers know, but intermittent fasting is my life's work now. I was a school teacher for 28 years. And so I'm really a teacher, not a celebrity. I'm a school teacher who loves to teach people about things. And right now, that thing I'm teaching people about is intermittent fasting. But prior to just discovering intermittent fasting for myself, obviously I didn't make it up, right? It's out there. It's been out there. But I was someone who struggled very much with weight. I got on that diet roller coaster early. The first time I went on a diet was after my freshman year of college. And from that point on, I was always up or down. I was in gaining weight or I was losing weight. Oh, now I've got to I'm gaining some more. Oh, now I've got to lose it again. So I was really either in the freedom or the discipline at any given time, right? I mean, no, I was either, that's what I meant to say. If I was in the freedom, I was just eating whatever, forget about it. I'm not doing anything. And then I was like, oh, I got to crack down. So I was on that yo-yo all the time. And it just decades and decades went by. And then I was obese eventually. I weighed 210 pounds and felt terrible in my body.
How old were you at that time?
I was in my 40s. So when I finally started intermittent fasting and never quit, it was 2014.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been doing this a very long time. I have been.
You were yo-yo dieting all through your 20s, all through your 30s.
40s.
Were there other things going on as well, like health challenges or anything? Or was it primarily just always looking at this weight up and down?
I'm really fortunate that I was pretty healthy as far as I know. I didn't go to the doctor.
Right.
For most people. I only went to the doctor if something was like acute, right? Like I had an ear infection because I was a teacher, or I had a, strep throat and I needed an antibiotic. So several times a year I would go to the doctor. I got frequent infections. I had terrible allergies. But I mean, I don't know. I hadn't really had a good checkup. So I don't know how high my
Mhm.
fasting insulin was. I don't know
Right.
what my A1C was. I really just don't know. But I did know that I was frequently sick and I was obese. I did have some
Mhm.
fibroids at one time and I had some surgery for that. But I remember this is prior to intermittent fasting. I
Mhm.
remember I was, I guess, in my early-ish 40s at that time. And I remember going to the pre-op and they were, they're like, now tell me all the medications you're on. And I was obese. Okay. So keep that in mind. And I was like, I'm not on any medications. And they're like, what?
How is that possible?
I don't know. Yeah, but I guess I didn't meet very many people in their 40s that were not on a list of medications, especially not people who were obese. But, I was still healthy enough other than getting, frequent illnesses with, infections, that sort of thing. But, I am now 55
Yeah.
and my dad, he passed away last year, but he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at the age of 55. And so I have no doubt, had I not started intermittent fasting in 2014, become metabolically healthy, now I have an amazing A1C. My fasting insulin
Mhm.
level is great. I don't have high cholesterol. And
Uh-huh.
I haven't been to the doctor for a sick visit since I
Mhm.
started intermittent fasting. And my immune system is so strong.
Mhm.
But I firmly believe if I had not figured it out and gotten control of it, I would be type 2 diabetic and
Mhm.
probably would have been for years now. I probably would have hit me before 55. So I have an entire different future ahead of me. I watched my dad, kind of ignore it and he would periodically buckle down. But, when he passed away at the age of 80, that he lived with
Yeah.
it from 55 till 80. But when he passed away at the age of 80, he had so many problems. Like I read when he went on to hospice, the nurse came and took, all the history and everything. And literally, like you name it, that was wrong with him.
Mhm.
He had a couple kinds of cancer. He was in congestive heart failure. His kidneys were failing. I mean, it was literally everything. And I think it was that foundation of the metabolic dysregulation that started,
Mhm.
with his type 2 diabetes and then just not taking care of his health. So that's been a really big motivator for me. Of course, I started because I was just, looking in the mirror. I didn't like the way I looked. I was
Well, and
obese. It felt bad.
I was wondering because for so many years you looked in the mirror and you didn't like the way you looked,
Right.
and you still continued to play with this freedom and discipline and back and forth and not committing to one thing. I can only imagine, which is what a lot of people do. They start a diet,
Right.
it works for a little while, they fall off the wagon, they do another one. So,
Yes.
what was and by the way, my first diet I was 9
Oh
years
my
old.
goodness.
Like, you were like saying you're so young, I was like, "Yeah, I beat you on that one, girl."
Yeah.
But it's not okay that we think
Mhm.
we look in the mirror and start to think that we should tear ourselves apart, but there was a point, obviously, where your mindset shifted, where you committed to intermittent fasting. Because, like you said, intermittent fasting had been out there for a while, it
Yeah. I
wasn't
first. Yeah.
brand new. So why that one? How did that, like, actually how were you able to have the discipline on that maybe you didn't, and then be able to weave that in to have some freedom again?
Yeah.
What was that changing point for you?
Well, when I go back to, why did I keep going yo-yoing back and forth? It's
Yeah.
because you can only white knuckle it through something that feels like deprivation or a diet
Yes.
for so long. We only have so much willpower, right?
Mhm.
And so, whether I was counting my calories or eating low carb or, you know, whatever diet I was doing was not sustainable. Of course, we know, as a physician that your body fights back metabolically.
Mhm.
I kept going back to the old standard thing, counting the calories, 1,200 calories a day, whatever. And then your body's like, you're starving, you're starving. Then you're like binging because your body is like, turned up your hunger
Mhm.
hormones because it thinks you're dying. And
Mhm.
so, I didn't understand. I didn't understand how the body worked at all. And you can only white knuckle it for so long. And, I could only restrict what I was eating for so long. I don't want to
Yeah.
be told I can never again have you know, potatoes, or I can never
Right.
again have cheese on my potato, right? I want to eat all the foods that love me back. I want to be able to celebrate and not fall off the wagon or feel like I've cheated. So all those years, I was really fighting my body. And
Yeah.
I just didn't know that both freedom and discipline could work together because
Mhm.
none of the diet plans allowed for that. You're either doing it or you weren't doing it. And so I first heard about intermittent fasting in 2009. But of course, back then, we didn't really know anything about the metabolic benefits. I mean, maybe some people did, but they were certainly not communicated. Intermittent fasting was pretty much sold to us as a way of here's how you eat fewer calories in a window or a period of time. And I immediately liked the idea of that because I wanted more freedom than the traditional diet. But I didn't understand that you had to become metabolically flexible, that it was a lifestyle, that there was
Yeah.
so much more to it than just it allowed you to eat fewer calories in a way that felt, more sustainable. So it really wasn't until I really hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
I think we all have that moment when it comes to many things. Any big challenge you've had in your life, whether someone's an alcoholic or a drug addict or obese or whatever the challenge is, or you have a terrible marriage, you hit a rock bottom point when you're like, I am no longer willing to do this. And so that's what happened to me in 2014. I'd been on a family vacation, been on a cruise, and saw the photos. And, we'd been
Oh.
on that trip. It was a week-long trip throughout the Caribbean, 7-day cruise. And we had gone to the Mayan ruins, hiking up the Mayan ruins so that I could barely move my body. I was 80 pounds heavier than I am now. I could barely move through. I was sweaty, miserable. And then I looked at the photos and I could barely keep up with my family. And I was like, this is not who I want to be. This is not who I am. I feel terrible. My knees hurt. My body ached. It was just a miserable way to live. And I'm like, I've got to do something about this. And so it was April of 2014. I would like to say I came back and immediately started intermittent fasting. And no, I had gotten on the cycle of, those crazy extreme weight loss approaches like the HCG diet
Yep.
or taking phentermine from your doctor, right? I'd cycled through all that stuff because I got the HCG from a doctor, lost a ton of weight, gained it all back plus more.
Common, plus 10% minimum on most of them,
Exactly.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah, that had been the only time I'd managed to keep the weight off for a significant period of time was when I was taking phentermine nonstop, and that is terrible for you.
It's a methamphetamine. I mean,
Yeah.
that's essentially it's like, you might as well go out and party and take some cocaine because that's about the same thing, you know
I
what I
felt
mean?
ragged out. That's a good way of putting it. Like, as long as I kept taking it, I could maintain the weight loss and I didn't feel like eating. But I was like, thank goodness I was like, I feel really bad. This feels terrible. My brain doesn't feel right. So I finally was like, I'm never doing that again. And that's when I really gained a ton of weight after I quit doing
Yeah.
that. I'd pretty much crashed my metabolism. But I came back from that cruise and went straight back to the doctor that would give me HCG shots, which is basically a starvation level diet.
Yeah.
So I did that, lost a little bit of weight with that, but my body was like, no. So I quit doing that and I was like, well, I was just going to have to be low carb. So I went to keto, did that the entire summer of 2014. And here's the little silver lining in that. I mean, I will never be low carb again. I will never be keto again. Hats off to people who find that as a lifestyle that they love, that works well for them. I hated it. I never felt full. I never felt satisfied. I never had
Yeah.
energy. But
I gained weight when I
I
did
also
keto.
did gain a little weight. Yeah.
I was
My
like,
body
"Wait."
doesn't do well with high fat, right? All that fat, ugh. I didn't feel great. But I think it got me into ketosis. I had one of those
Yeah.
breathalyzers that you blow into. It had to be plugged in, and I was in ketosis, but it was because I was eating all that fat. I was basically making ketones from all the fat I was eating. But my body was fat adapted. So I was like going back to school in the fall, and I was like, I cannot take low carb food to school. I cannot be low carb in work. I hate these foods. I feel terrible. And I like dusted back off the idea of intermittent fasting and started it again. It was August of 2014. But this time it was different. I think it was because I was fat adapted from being keto, and I just went to a daily 5-hour eating window and I started losing weight and I felt good. And I realized we didn't know anything about ketosis and fasting at that time. Let me just say, we didn't know
Right.
that fasting got you into ketosis. We didn't know that. Or maybe some people did, but the
Yeah.
circles I was running around in didn't know it. And just the common people trying to lose weight, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I had a cheeseburger and fries last night, and today I'm back in ketosis.
Oh my gosh, you're killing the adrenal fatigue nutrition doctor here.
Sorry.
I'm like,
That's not how I eat
"No."
now. Okay. Now I'm like, eat a
We
lot of
should just point
beans.
out this is a gradation
It is.
of,
Well,
like,
look, this was 2014 Jen
of
who
what
didn't eat at
happens
26,
over time,
right?
right?
And again, you have to look at the fact that I weighed 210 pounds. And
Yes.
when you're 210 pounds, if the only thing you can do is eat in a window
Yeah.
and fast clean the rest of the time and then eat in your window, you're going to be better off eating your crappy American diet in
Yeah.
5 hours and fasting clean the rest of the time than you were when you were eating your crappy diet for 12 hours. That
Right.
ideally you learn, oh, I feel better when I eat different foods. And I went down that complete path.
Of course.
I eat
Yeah.
completely differently than I used to, but that unfolded naturally over time. But that time that I started intermittent fasting, August of 2014, I never quit. So here I am. It's been over 11, well, almost 11 years from the time that we're recording this. Almost 11 years of being an intermittent faster, and I will never not be an intermittent faster. I feel better now than I did in my 30s, in my 20s.
Yeah. And over the years, like we were talking about, this becomes a gradation of, you start with this and then you do this and then you do this and you
Yeah,
improve your diet more and you get the exercise in. Because I do think a lot of people do intermittent fasting. Maybe they lose a lot of weight, but they never actually grow from there.
right.
They just stay in the standard American diet. They don't put in the workouts. And then what happens is a lot of times they start to gain the weight back, or once again, they fall off the wagon. Do you
Yeah,
find that? Like, does it have to, I think in our lives, I believe we always grow. We
yeah.
always continue to grow on health and healthful habits. And a starting point is just a starting point. Do you find that as well, as you've worked and seen all of these people and built these communities, that the most successful are continuing to level up as they go
Yes,
forward?
100%. And it really goes down to one thing, and that is
Mhm.
mindset.
Uh-huh.
People who start intermittent fasting, and I've put a lot of content out there in the world now. I've got 480
Yeah.
episodes of intermittent fasting stories where I talk to people who are intermittent fasters. Common
Mhm.
themes come throughout all those episodes. So I've talked to a lot of people. I've had, hundreds of thousands of people through my support communities, but it all comes down to the mindset. If you
Mhm.
start intermittent fasting with a desperation, I got to lose this weight as fast as I can,
Mhm.
not going to do well.
I
Not
think
going to
in
do well.
any health, it doesn't
No,
do well. Yeah.
no. Or like, with that toxic diet mentality. And, I could talk
Mhm.
about that for 5 hours. You go to the checkout at the grocery store and there's, your women's magazine that has someone on the cover. Like we're recording this. It's May 19th when we're recording it. So Memorial Day is coming up soon, right? So you be there on May 19th and the cover says lose 50 pounds by Memorial Day.
With someone such as me on the cover,
You're not going to lose 50
right?
pounds by Memorial Day unless you like amputate your limbs, right? I mean, you cannot do it. But people think, oh, I could lose 50 pounds by Memorial Day if I follow this diet. You're not going to, but then you don't have success, you crash and burn. So when someone starts intermittent fasting with the crash diet mentality, it's not going to work. And you're desperate and you're not going to stick to it.
Mhm.
Also, when you start intermittent fasting with the idea that it's going to be quick weight loss and then you're going to stop, that's not
Yeah.
going to work either. Intermittent fasting really is a lifestyle change. And when people, understand what we call the clean fast, they
Mhm.
fast clean, they find the intermittent fasting approach that is sustainable. We don't want
Mhm.
to over fast. We don't
Right.
want to over restrict. My New York Times bestseller is called
Mhm.
Fast, Feast,
Yeah.
Repeat. It's not called Fast, Eat a little diet meal, repeat. We have to nourish our bodies well,
Mhm.
and we have to do something that is sustainable. When people become fat adapted as intermittent fasters after the first initial adaptation period, and then you're able to do it and your body can flip that metabolic switch easily, you feel so good. Unlike,
Mhm.
I talked about before, all those diets before that I did, the
Yeah.
longer you did them, the worse you felt.
Mhm.
You could
Because
white
you're
knuckle
becoming
it.
nutrient deficient. I mean,
It's
your
true.
body can't run without nutrients.
No.
If a 12-year-old came to us and said, "Hey, I'd like to starve myself and eat nothing to
Yeah.
lose weight," we would all say, "What? No, you need nutrients." But when we say, "Let's starve ourselves," we're like, "Oh, okay. Good job. Yeah, let's
Right. Yeah.
promote that."
No. And we need the nutrients. We need to nourish our body well. So, when people who start intermittent fasting with the idea that it's going to be super quick, or
Mhm.
you're going to do it for a little bit, then you're going to quit, or you don't have
Mhm.
to fast clean. You read somewhere you could put butter in your coffee if you wanted to. It's not going to work as well. I mean, you're not going to get the benefits of the clean fast. We can go into that and talk about that later if you'd like to. But
Yes.
it's important to have the right mindset going into it, and that you are doing this. I like to now call it the health plan with the side effect of weight loss, because that's truly what I believe intermittent fasting is. If it were true that I could go back to eating throughout the entire day, if I could have, early morning breakfast, snacks throughout the day, all the meals, if I could go back to how I used to eat, or the standard way people eat, and still maintain my weight the way I am right now, just no more fasting, I wouldn't do it, because I love the way it feels to be an intermittent faster.
Mhm.
And so that's the thing. I wouldn't go back because I love the way I feel. And I think
Mhm.
that's super important. So everything else I ever did was not sustainable, nor did I want it to
Mhm.
be. Whereas, like, this weekend I had friends in town. I had a longer window on Saturday. We went out to eat 2 times on Saturday. People are in town, they wanna go have the special restaurant meals. Then when they were all going back home on Sunday, they're like, "We wanna have brunch." So it was like 11 o'clock. I could have chosen to eat with them, but I was like, "I don't I just I'm gonna wait." So I went with them, and I drank my black coffee, and I looked at what they were eating. It looked amazing. I could have had it if I wanted to. I really did not want to. I was like, "Yesterday, I ate more than I normally do. Today, I feel I'll just wait." And I
Mhm.
did. And so I waited. I went to my normal window and had my normal window, and it didn't feel like any kind of I was missing out. It
Yeah.
felt like a gift I was giving my body.
Well, when you were mentioning mindset, the other part that I think is really important is the mindset we have when we look at ourselves in the
Yeah.
mirror during this process. Because when we do lose weight or even get older, our bodies change.
Okay, I could talk
My
about that for
skin
5
is
hours
very
too.
different. I just sat in the sun with my kids yesterday. We went to the pool at the gym. It's this cool pool. And I'm sitting out there, and afterwards I'm like, well, I didn't get a tan, but I got spotted. Because I don't tan evenly anymore, right? I freckle. That's just an age thing, right? And we look at ourselves in the body and we go, "Oh," and I think there's a lot of mindset around that as well, because during that process you're not losing as fast as your brain wants you to lose,
Right.
and you're seeing your body change, and maybe there's going to be some skin hanging off in different
Look,
places. And
I got some,
yeah,
but I will
awesome.
say, after I went through menopause, like, my body, when I first lost the weight with intermittent fasting, I was a little tighter.
Yeah.
And then I went through menopause, and, no one tells us that you're going to have worse skin elasticity. That's just what your body does. So I'm like, "Whose legs are these?"
Me too. I know. And then I'm like, but then why do we do that to ourselves? I
I
mean, you, Jen, are so beautiful, and you've accomplished
know.
so much with your health, and you feel so great. I feel great. I've never
So
felt
great.
better in my entire life. Yet I sit there and I pick on
Yeah,
myself all the time. And I think that's something as women that we
we
really
do.
need to get a mindset around, because our bodies are beautiful at different stages of life. And it's about feeling good
Yeah.
and being able to be present in our lives and do the things that we want to do without pain, and be able to go play and have fun and travel and eat with people when they come to town, and not feel like we're always in this
Yeah.
restrictive, I have to be better than I am mindset. This
Mhm.
perfectionism mindset is not only messing with our mental health, but it completely throws our stress response off. And when our adrenal glands start messing with those hormones, it's going to throw a wrench in even intermittent fasting. It's a holistic thing, right?
Right.
You're giving, from the adrenal perspective, you're giving the body a specific map. This is when I eat from this time to this time. And the body starts to say, oh, it's time to eat now. And it gets predictable,
Right.
right? Where in other models, where sometimes you're eating, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're
Mhm.
eating, sometimes you're binging, the adrenal glands don't know what to do with that. So
Mhm.
you're going to give your body this predictable response every day through intermittent fasting or whatever. You also have to have the mindset of eating with a calm state,
Yes.
acceptance, and
Mhm.
love and gratitude for whatever this process is. And that is one part I have never seen mentioned in diet programs.
No. And with when I was talking before about how traditional diets got harder and harder until you finally just like, I can't do this anymore. Intermittent fasting is the exact opposite.
Mhm,
When you find what works for you, the balance of eating window length and fasting length, and that isn't going to be the same every single day, by the way. One day you might need a longer window just because of you were a little more active or you didn't sleep as
mhm,
well. You learn to listen to your body in a
mhm,
different way. And it gets easier and easier as time goes on, not harder and harder. You learn what your body needs and what feels good. And it's really important to emphasize there's no one size fits all way to do it. And it depends on your metabolic health, how much fat do you have on your body to pull from? If you're in the period of time where you're actively burning a lot of fat, your body's using that as fuel. But when you get to your goal
mhm.
range, you need to eat a little bit more because you're not trying to lose more weight. We want to be at a healthy weight. We're not trying to just get as skinny as we can till we disappear. We want to be healthy in our bodies. And that's really important. And another factor that really determines whether someone will be successful long term is appreciating their body, like you were talking about
Mhm.
before. And I could look at myself. I've got this little right here, whatever. I've got cellulite all over my thighs. So did my mother. I got that from her. And if I thought I had to I will never have a cellulite free body with no cellulite on my thighs. I could lose 30 more pounds until I died and would not. I mean, that's not the way my body is built, right? My body is built the way it's built. And so when you have like unrealistic expectations, like I am not going to look like Tricia Pingel. I do not have long legs and I'm not lanky, you know? I'm
No, but you're adorable just the
well,
way you are.
but that's the thing. I am who I am, and my body shape did not change when I lost 80 pounds. I still have those cellulite thighs. Sometimes people are like, when I lose my weight, will I lose my cellulite? I'm like, no,
No.
and it's okay. And sometimes people are like, well, I still can't get rid of my muffin top. And I'm like, well, guess what? Your muffin top means your pants are too tight. Get another size pants.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. That was a lesson that was really hard for
Yeah.
me to learn coming from the modeling world and always being so tiny and then having children and still being very tiny and very fit. I mean, I exercise every day, like, and
Right.
I fantastic, but like allowing myself to go up in size
Mhm.
was a huge thing for me. For some reason, I was like,
Uh-huh.
no, I've always been a size 0 too. I can't be a 4. What are you
Right.
talking about? They won't book me if I'm a 4. Well, that's
Uh-huh.
baloney. They won't book me if I'm hanging over the pants, right?
Exactly.
Be better to do a bigger size that make me look really slim
That's
and
it.
pretty, right?
Yeah. If you have a lot of back fat spilling out of your bra, it's because your bra is too tight. Get a bra that fits you. Like I learned that lesson. I saw this tiny little girl. She's like a teenager, tiny, like no body fat. I mean, tiny little low body fat. And she was all squished into her bra and she had all kind of rolls coming out of it. And it was just skin because her bra was too tight. And I'm like, oh, she's wearing an ill-fitting bra and it doesn't look good. It's not that your body is wrong, it's that your clothes are not fitting you. And just understanding that, work with the body you have, wear the clothes. What if clothes didn't even have sizes and you just put them on till they fit and you just bought the ones that fit? Wouldn't that be nice?
We can do that. We should
That would
do
be
that.
great.
We should just make that a we
We're the
should start a
unsized
movement.
tour.
Never look at the size.
Yeah.
Just hold it up and see what it looks
If
like.
it fits
I want
you, you should wear it.
I wanted to bring something up that you said to me years ago
Okay.
that I don't that maybe will help people is and you're kind of alluding to it that there's so many people out there promoting intermittent fasting, but
Yeah.
not all intermittent fasting is the same. And in fact, a lot of them are just putting a lot of the biggest ones are just putting it into one box and
Mhm.
not looking at the customized fact. So, what can you speak to on that? Why is yours? I mean, you've wrote numerous books on this. You've
Mhm.
created an amazing huge community. You have helped so many people. You are definitely a powerhouse in this space. So, why is your approach different or how is it different from what people are getting as they scroll through social media
Yeah.
and taking quick action and listening and saying, "You know what? Didn't work for me." What what's your advice there? Because you come about it differently, correct?
Well, the one thing that's different about me is the clean fast, and I do want to get into that later. We'll talk about the clean fast is
Okay.
really the key for it being sustainable and to be easy, and I do want to talk about that. But when it comes to my books and why I'm different, if you look at every diet book on the shelf, probably every single diet book on the shelf, except mine, I would bet that is the exact diet that the person who wrote that book did. Those are the foods that work for that person. Those
Mhm.
are the foods that make them feel satisfied and help them lose weight. Like, for example, I just talked about my love of potatoes and beans. I do
Mhm.
not feel physically satisfied unless I have had high quality starchy carbs.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not the kind of person that can have a salad with the chicken breast on top and a lot of vegetables and feel like I've eaten. I'm
Yeah.
starving after I've eaten. That makes no sense. People are like, "What?" Someone who that
Oh,
fills them up is like, "What's wrong?" That's my favorite meal. But
I so agree. I go out to restaurants and say that I'm plant-based, and they give me a salad with nothing on it, and I'm like, "This I'm gonna be
oh,
starving in, like, 20 minutes. Where are the beans?
I
Where's the
need
lentils?
potatoes. I need
Where's the
beans.
tofu? Where's the sweet potatoes?
Yeah,
Where's the avocado? Like, for
right.
God's sakes, give me
But if
something."
I take that same salad and put it in a wrap,
Yeah,
suddenly I'm satisfied. I can eat it
right.
in a tortilla. So if I wrote a diet book that was exactly what I do and what I eat,
Yeah.
that wouldn't work for everybody else.
Nope.
And I said, you should have your window from 2 to 7 because that's when my window is. It's from 2 to 7. I mean that,
Yep.
and here's the food you eat in it. No. And so my approach is here are some ways to approach intermittent fasting. Here's the eating window approach. Here's alternate day fasting, which is a very well researched approach. Here are some ways you can design it. I'm not saying everyone should have an eating window in the afternoon or everyone should have it in the evening or everyone should have it in the morning. You must break your fast with this combination of macros. No.
It
Some
sounds
people,
stressful, Jen. Like, that just sounds stressful.
but that you had to do it a certain way.
If you had to
Yeah,
do it not your way, the other
right.
way,
It is.
like, I feel like it's back to counting calories
Well, it
and
is.
macros and fat grams, and I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
you
But
know?
again, every book and every other intermittent fasting book that I'm aware of, other than mine, has a diet program attached to it. It might be intermittent
Right.
fasting plus keto, or it might be intermittent fasting plus paleo, or maybe it's intermittent fasting plus vegan. Those are all
Mhm.
books that are out there. Or intermittent fasting with this little spin of what you should be eating. But you have to figure out what foods make you feel your best.
Mhm.
We're not all the same with what foods make us feel their best. I have a co-host of my Fast Feast Repeat podcast, Sherry. She's a great friend of mine. She does not feel satisfied without meat. She's experimented with lots of ways of eating. She must have meat protein. Maybe not every day, but I think she does eat meat every day. I don't.
I can't. My body every time, my body's like, "Nope."
Yeah.
Even if I try to increase my eggs a little bit just to
Yeah.
get more protein, because 'cause I'm getting older and I know
Yeah.
I need more protein, and I'm working out a lot, so I'm like, "Okay, I gotta eat," and I try if I could do it twice a week, I do it 3 times a week, my body's like, "Nope, I don't want those eggs anymore."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
But
it's just
it's intuitive
it
eating,
is.
right? And it's learning your body and loving your body, and for me, one of the reasons the show is out there is we live by other people's expectations all the
Yeah.
time. What is everyone else doing that's working now? I'm gonna do it.
Right.
No, we're both saying no.
Yeah.
You listen to what your body needs, be intuitive to your body, take the education from people such as Jen that says, here's some ways that you can design this and figure out what's for you. So would you advise that people start with your first book and
Well,
move through them?
it depends. I'll show you my little selection I got 'em right here. So this is
Yes, I
my
know you
revised
have so many. Show them off, girl.
this is my first book, but I revised it last year. So now it's up to date. I was not recommending this for a while because it didn't have the term clean fasting in there, for example. And when I wrote it, it was the end of 2016. I didn't know nearly as much as I know now, but this is the
Yeah.
one that I would encourage everyone to start with. Delay Don't Deny, Living an Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle. And it's the second edition. The paperback is only available on Amazon, the ebook everywhere, the audiobook everywhere. That's the one that it's the quick introduction. It'll tell you everything you need to know and you're ready to get started. Some people don't want to read a book that's this thick, right? So here's see the
I
difference?
was just looking at my book going, oh, yeah, probably. Like, nobody wants to read
That's the different, right? This one, oh, and that's actually this is Fast Feast Repeat. This is this is the New York Times bestseller, but this is the comprehensive guide. And boy, it has a lot of stuff in there. You know,
But
it's
you
all
have
the
it on
science.
audio though, right? Too,
All
though,
of
the
them are on audio.
comprehensive?
All
Oh,
of them
good.
are on audio.
Okay.
But you don't need to have everything to get started. So you start with delay, don't deny. And then from there, I point you to the other resources. Some people need more hand holding. I've got 28-day fast start day by day, which is
Mhm.
more of like a workbook journal kind of thing. It has dailies. It's got the different days on the side, and it's got reflections. And this is a great way to get started. But really, you don't need. You just start with delay, don't deny. Understand the clean fast, and then just start from there. And then as you're ready for more resources, you can dig into them. But a lot of people don't need any more. They're just like, all right, 5-hour window or whatever works for me, 8-hour, 4-hour, make it work for your day and figure out the foods that work for you. And that's really, the whole point of it is to feel empowered, to learn to trust your body. And we all have that. We're born with it. You think about the world, nature, humans. The only animals in the entire world that struggle with obesity are humans and the animals we feed. Think about that. Little squirrel out there in the yard gathering up his nuts. He's not like, I wonder if nuts are really the best food for me. I saw that squirrel over there and he heard about the carnivore squirrel diet and he just only eats meat now. And so, he looks pretty good. Maybe I'll no. And the
They also
squirrel,
don't worry about being too skinny. They're the opposite. They're like, "Oh, I need to be fed."
they also know when to stop eating.
Absolutely.
No animal in the wild will eat itself into obesity if it's eating the foods that it's naturally designed to eat. But it's not the
Now,
same for every animal.
yeah, and I do wonder, like, you had started this yo-yo dieting and you had started to gain weight. I'm just wonder, like, because you were saying naturally, we don't become the
Well,
animals don't
okay.
become obese. So there's something that happens
Well,
in your brain that makes you say, "I'm going to eat to fill that need," or "I'm going to start to pay attention." Did you ever figure out, or what are
I
your
think we
thoughts on
all
that?
we know it's the modern food environment. It's not a natural way of eating. Though if
Yeah.
you look back before grocery stores, before modern time, before packaged foods, the only people who struggled with obesity back then were like the kings who
Yeah,
were
because they had feasts
right.
upon
And they had
feasts.
sugar and they were refining the foods, refining the bread. They were eating different foods. So, you look back to the cyclical nature of how people would eat seasonally.
Mhm.
And the way that, maybe in the winter months, you might more heavily focus on the animal foods because that's what was available when it was cold. And then in the summer and the plants came out and you're eating there was no time where people were eating all the foods all the time, really. That
Nor were they sitting all day
or
long
were
on
they
their
sitting? They
bums.
had to work. And, here's something really interesting. Do you know who Tim Spector is?
No.
He is a researcher from the UK, and he's done a lot of gut microbiome research and also some stuff into intermittent fasting. He did some really fascinating twin studies early in his career. He's one of the co-founders of the Zoe program, which is burst, personalized nutrition, gut microbiome, how your body responds to foods. He's very heavily into plants,
Mhm.
the health of plants, of course, being a gut microbiome expert. But he went and studied the Hazda people. They're a traditional hunter-gatherer society who are still pretty much eating like their ancestors did. They're not eating the modern way. And he found they naturally eat within about an 8-hour period.
Yeah, well,
Just
most of us do. I mean, if you think about it, I sleep a lot of my day. I mean, I sleep well, so I
yeah.
wake up, I kind of get my kids
Mhm.
off. I personally eat breakfast. I know you don't eat breakfast because your window's later, and I don't fast. But if I look at naturally when I'm hungry and naturally what I eat, I mean, I don't like eating past 6 o'clock at night
You're doing
anyway because
it.
I go to bed. Like I'm early. I go to bed early and I get up early, and it is true. We really don't eat much outside an 8-hour window.
Yeah. Well, they don't because they're out hunter gathering, they're doing their
Yeah.
work and imagine if you had to prepare everything from scratch. Like if the only way you were going to have bread, Tricia, is if you had gathered the wheat and you had to grind it. I mean, you would not be like sitting around eating loaves of bread all the time. You would just have like your little bit, you'd eat it. And so ultra processed foods, I talked about before about the only animals that struggle with obesity are humans and the animals we feed. What I
Yep.
feed my cat is not what my cat would be eating out in the wild. And we have a diabetic cat. So
No.
that crunchy food is not the ideal, that kibble, not the ideal food for our pets.
Right.
So it's the ultra processed foods that are interfering with our satiety signals.
Mhm.
Our bodies don't have, they don't count calories. Our bodies count nutrients.
Mhm.
So if you aren't putting nutrients in, your body's like, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. So you never feel satisfied and you never feel
Mhm.
full. And you just keep searching. You don't know why. Like you could eat an entire Big Mac meal with the large fries and a large Coke. That is a huge caloric load. And an hour later, you're hungry.
You're starving.
And
Mhm.
and it's not because you didn't eat a lot of calories. You ate a ton of calories. You don't need any more calories, but you didn't put in any nutrients. And your
Mhm.
body knows you didn't have the nutrients. And so your body's like, you got to have something else.
Mhm.
And of course, when most people are going to have something else, it's a snack or it's chips or
Chips. Yeah.
it's whatever, those processed foods.
Mm.
Remember, like granola bars in your purse all the time. I always had snacks with me, but it
Mhm.
wasn't nourishing my body well. I was the phrase that really comes to mind, I didn't make this one up either, overfed and undernourished. That is the problem that we're in. Someone could be obese and malnourished at the same
Mhm.
time. We have a
Oh,
we
absolutely.
have a fuel problem because we're not nourishing our bodies well.
Mhm.
And that's what makes me so sad about, the modern day weight loss drugs. I
Oh,
mentioned I
absolutely.
mentioned that I took
Because
Centramine. It
they're
shuts
I
down
mean,
your
they're
appetite.
depleting muscle on top of it, and there's no nutrients going in, and one of the
Exactly.
number one feedback when I released my total health turnaround, which was a lot of plants, and it was feeding for adrenal health, right?
Right.
It was looking at feeding foods that gave nutrients to the body, and
Mhm.
everyone said, "Well, I can't live off a salad." Now, you and I know it wasn't just
I would
greens and
not
a
live off
tomato.
salad
I
either.
can't either. But when but what the biggest feedback that I had was, "Wow, I can't believe how I'm not hungry."
Mhm.
And from eating a lot of plants, I should be hungry. And I no, because you're getting the nutrients you
Right.
need, your body isn't craving anything else.
Yes.
And that was the number one surprise and feedback when people started doing my program was, I can't believe I'm not still hungry from eating, a lot of plants. And it's so right because these weight loss drugs
Mhm.
are taking away our muscle, right?
Yeah.
People are losing weight, they're
Bone
taking away
density is being
nutrition.
impacted. Yeah.
And for me, I say, if you would, I say this, I'm coming out now, Jen. If you would like to give yourself diabetes,
Mhm.
take those drugs.
Yeah.
I 100% believe that. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some rare people out there that are definitely eating a nutritious food and building muscle mass and doing whatever. Look, I'm not bashing any therapy, but what I'm saying is the way things are being marketed
Mhm.
as a quick, like you were saying, a crash diet. Quick, you can lose this. You can come off of it.
Yeah.
No, you can't. You can't come off of
No,
that.
you can't come
You're
off
on
of
it for
their
life
own
at
literature says that.
$1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
right?
But if someone is I think, if someone has struggled, if they're obese, I mean, you've never
Uh-huh,
been obese. It does feel different. And
100%.
we've tried so hard. Everyone who is obese, if I had not figured out how to live an intermittent fasting lifestyle successfully, I'm sure I would be on those
Mhm.
injections right this minute.
There's no
I do
judgment.
not
It's
doubt it.
yeah.
But I feel like I have discovered, the cheat code, and it is intermittent fasting with the clean fast plus nourishing your body well within
Mhm,
within your eating window or whatever framework you choose for intermittent fasting, because you will have those satiety signals that you might
mhm.
have never felt before.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh," we call it appetite correction. Dr. Burt Herring came up with that terminology. He wrote a book called Appetite Correction. He was a physician and, interested in metabolism, and he started with a 5-hour eating window for himself. His was one of the first books I read about it back in the day. And when you find the combination of fasting and eating high quality foods that nourish your body well, you
Mhm.
suddenly feel when you've had enough. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you'll never overeat, because you still like, "Oh, well, I should have stopped, but it was so good, and I ate 3 more bites than I should have. Now I'm a little too full." That still happens, but not the way it was before. So
Mhm.
you get to the point where you're naturally in tune with how much your body needs. I haven't counted a calorie, counted a fat gram, counted a
Me
since
neither.
I started intermittent fasting. I just
Yeah.
eat, and then I stop eating when I've had enough. And again, if I opened my eating window with a bag of Doritos,
But you're gonna eat more.
I would
And
be
if you're
like,
shoving it
"Ew."
while you're driving in your mouth and not, like, sitting mindfully and eating mindfully, you're gonna
No,
eat a lot more
exactly. But if
as
I had a big
well.
baked potato,
I know. So you talked about the clean fast, so tell me
yeah.
about that.
Okay, the clean fast really is the key. And we coined that phrase in my intermittent fasting support groups in around 2017, which is why it wasn't in the first book. But when you're trying to
Mhm.
explain to people, what it was, we just like, all right, you want to fast clean, and then that name stuck. And so when I read the obesity code in
Mhm.
2016, I learned from Jason Fung about insulin response, the
Mhm.
cephalic phase insulin response, more particularly. And he also taught me about how insulin is our storage hormone. You know all this.
Mhm.
Insulin's a storage hormone. So when we eat, our body releases insulin. That is
Mhm.
normal. It is what we want to happen so we can
Mhm.
store what we ate. Unfortunately, in the modern world, we are in a cycle of constant insulin response. Like imagine someone who's just like sipping on a diet soda all day long, diet soda all day long. You got that taste of that diet soda. Well, diet culture tells you that is just fine because it's 0 calories, right?
Yeah.
Well, no.
Mhm.
It has lots of other negative effects on your gut. We can talk
Mhm.
about neurological, but let's just talk about it through the lens of insulin for a second.
Right.
Insulin is anti-lipolytic, meaning works against fat burning. So
Mhm.
if you have really high levels of insulin, you're going to have a really hard time tapping into your fat stores. So when I read the obesity code, he talked about the cephalic phase insulin response, and that is, cephalic is brain. So
Mhm.
you taste something sweet. They did these studies with like rodents,
Mhm.
and they painted their little rodent oral cavity with artificial sweeteners.
Mhm.
And their brain said, "Oh, sweetness, we know what that is. That's going to be, because think about in nature,
Mhm.
honey, fruit. If you're having something that tastes sweet from nature, you're going to have a blood sugar rise pretty soon because that's what sweet things do. And
Mhm.
so your brain says, go ahead and get some insulin going. So your pancreas
Mhm.
pumps out some insulin in waiting for this sugar load that comes in, except now you're having a diet soda
Mhm.
and there is no sugar load at 0 calories. Well, that, of course, causes your
Mhm.
body to be confused. But
Mhm.
they had the insulin response just from the sweet taste. Then they
Mhm.
cut their little nerves from their tongue to their brain so they couldn't taste it anymore. And they repeated it, no insulin response. The taste was what matters. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh. So fasting goal number one, we want to keep our insulin low. And we do that by not having anything that makes our brain think that sweetness or food is coming in. So we avoid any kind of artificial sweetener or any real sweetener, any kind of sweet taste. We avoid fruit flavors, like you're not going to drink your, raspberry herbal sweet
Mhm.
tea, or even chamomile tea has a sweet flavor profile.
Mhm.
We avoid anything that has a food-like or sweet flavor profile. You can have sparkling water, but don't get lemon flavored sparkling water, for
Mhm.
example. So we want to
Yeah.
keep our insulin low by sticking to plain water, plain sparkling water, no sweeteners added. Black coffee is fine. Black tea is fine. Those have a bitter flavor profile, which are not associated with an insulin response. So that's one fasting goal. Keep insulin low while we're fasting. And when you open your window, you're going to have insulin response. That's normal. We just keep it low during the fast. So fasting goal two is we want to tap into our stored fuel that we have in our bodies, whether that's glycogen in your liver that you're depleting first, or some glycogen in your muscles, or eventually you want to tap into your fat stores. So we want
Mhm.
our body to have to tap into fat stores. So we're not going to put cream in our coffee, even
Yeah.
though that YouTube video that somebody else made said you could. We're not going to put MCT oil in your coffee, because would you rather burn the fat on your body or
Yeah,
the
or
fat
the
from your coffee cup?
that's why keto doesn't make sense to me with fasting because you're burning what you're eating rather than
I was in super deep ketosis that whole summer of 2014 that I did keto and lost no fat.
yeah,
But I was blowing whatever the highest level was. I was blowing out ketones because it was
you're
all
losing plenty of muscle, I'm sure.
all the fat that I was taking in, my body was converting to ketones,
Mhm.
but I wasn't fueling myself from stored fuel, right? So if
Mhm.
you want to burn stored fuel, you got to not be putting so much in, especially while you're fasting. And
Mhm.
don't put the MCT oil and the coconut oil, all of that. No.
Mhm.
I'm so glad that the exogenous ketone trend is over. That was big for a while. We like to, when we had our Facebook group, people were like, I bought these exogenous ketones. Can I have them while I'm fasting? I'm like, well, to me, taking exogenous ketones is like you just sprayed your body with somebody else's sweat and said you worked out.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
Yeah.
we make ketones while we're fasting from stored body fat, but the
Yep.
goal is not ketones. The goal is burning your fat. So we're like
Right.
missing the point. The goal is not ketones; it's burning your fat.
Ketones is the marker,
Yeah,
natural marker of your body burning fat. It's
right.
not something you're putting into your body.
Unless you're
Yes.
epileptic or you have certain
Right.
brain disorders where ketones are therapeutic, we're not
Yeah.
trying to worry about ketones. No. And then the third fasting goal is we want to have increased autophagy.
Mhm.
And autophagy, we didn't know what that was until around, I mean, you may have known what it was, but most people didn't until 2016. The Nobel Prize for medicine that year was based on autophagy research. And one of the things that increases autophagy is fasting. And, what is autophagy? It's the body's cellular repair, housekeeping. A lot of things stimulate autophagy. Black coffee does, exercise
Mhm.
does, but fasting also does. And
Mhm.
what would shut down autophagy? Well, eating,
Mhm.
protein also. So your bone broth not going to work when you're fasting clean because you're taking in protein. We're not going to take our pre-workouts or our collagen supplements while we're fasting. So when you remember those 3 fasting goals, we want to keep our insulin low, we want to tap into our stored fat for fuel. That gives us that metabolic flexibility, and we want to have our increased autophagy. Now, we're not chasing autophagy. We're not like trying to fast forever. You have to
Yeah.
have the periods. It's the balance. So while we're fasting clean, we stick to, like I said, plain water, plain sparkling water, black coffee, real tea. If you love all those sweet, fruity herbal teas, your chai teas, whatever, have them in your eating window. That's just fine. But during your fast, you protect that time so that you get all of the benefits from the clean fast. And once I read the obesity code, I'd been putting stevia in my coffee.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had been putting cinnamon in my coffee. I had been drinking diet sodas or flavored sparkling water. And every single day I white knuckled it until it was time to open my window. But, I was losing weight, but I felt terrible. So when I was like, oh, I now know I need to keep my insulin low and fast and started fasting clean, even though we weren't calling it that yet. The fast immediately got easy. No more
Yeah.
white knuckling. It was not hard. So for anybody who's listening, you think, well, I tried intermittent fasting. It was too hard and it didn't work.
Mhm.
Whenever I ask people, tell me what you drank. They're always like,
Mhm.
well, I heard you could do it. I'm like, well, that's why. That's why it was hard. It's because you were putting that in your coffee or you're getting those electrolyte supplements that had the flavoring in it.
Mhm.
That's keeping you from really your body really being able to flip that metabolic switch. And people might think, well, there's no way that a 0 calorie, diet soda is really affecting me that much. And to that, I say, take the clean fast challenge. Give yourself 30 days. 30 days, do it my way. It's fine if you don't think it's going to work or you don't think it's going to matter. Do it for 30 days. No one goes back. Once you have found the clean fast and you feel it, you're like, oh, it really does feel different.
Well, and the idea of the senses, right? Giving
Mhm.
our brain the response. I talk about this a lot too in stress. If you taste something that reminds you of your mom, if you smell something that reminds you of an ex boyfriend, I mean, whatever, those senses
Yeah.
have a response in the brain, and the brain then has a response in the body.
Right.
And you're so right. And it's such a great point that you can take all these diet things, diet candies, diet Coke, whatever, but they're still sweet. And
Yeah.
that's a taste.
Yeah.
And different tastes have different reactions in the brain, which have different changes in your
Yep.
body. And this goes across everything. We have our eyes, our ears, our smell,
Yep.
our taste, right? Our touch. And you can actually use all of those to put your body into a parasympathetic state as well. And I talk a lot about that. So, it's funny how we go back to the basics
Mhm.
of our general physiology
Yeah.
in order to be well. And in a world of all this technology and all these fad diets and all this stimulation and all these things and things and things and things, it goes back to what our body was born
Right.
to do, which is eat nutrients,
Uh-huh.
use nutrients, remove toxins,
Mhm.
right? and repair our body every night while we sleep,
Yeah.
and for better immunity.
Yep.
And like you said, discipline and freedom,
Yeah.
right?
There we go.
It's the discipline of committing to yourself. I think that's the discipline.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, what was the discipline?
Well,
Was it the intermittent
I mean,
fasting? Well,
there's
whatever it was for you, it's a discipline of you figuring it out and then saying, I'm worth it.
here's the
I'm worth
discipline.
this discipline.
The discipline is that I fast every day.
Yeah.
Even if it's Christmas Day and I open really early that day, like, we're having cheese and sausage balls around the Christmas tree as we open our presents. Even if I have a really long window, like this past Christmas, I was like, oh, I'm really full. It's been a long day. And I realized 8 hours is how long I ate. That really wasn't that long, compared to how I used to
Yeah.
eat. But the discipline is every day I wake up and I fast clean until I open my window every day.
Yep.
Christmas, I opened earlier, but I still fasted up until that moment that I opened my window.
Mhm.
And I have the discipline to do it every day because that's where the freedom comes to not have to count the calories or count the macros or whatever. So because of the discipline to
Mhm.
fast daily, I have the freedom to enjoy my
Yep.
window.
And many would say, but it's Christmas. I'll start the diet after the holidays because I have Christmas. And I always say, how is Christmas any different when it comes to food? You can still say no. You
Right.
can still make something different. I host a huge Christmas party every year. Everything I make, scratch. Everything is gluten-free. Everything is vegetables. We also have a meat for, my husband makes meat. But everyone's like, wow, this is really good. But they weren't eating, the traditional sugar cookies and things
Right.
like that. And it was still just as good of a meal. So why is it that we have to abandon our health
Yeah.
on a holiday? I don't understand it. I think my point is that discipline comes from loving yourself enough
Right.
to commit to it every single day because you're worth feeling good.
Right. Oh, that was like yesterday. I went with my sister and my friends before they left town. I went with them they ate breakfast and it was like 10 o'clock. I was like, they had this avocado toast with some greens on top and a little runny egg. It would have been delicious on home baked sourdough bread. I would have really enjoyed that taste in my mouth. I like all those things. But you know what? I've had that before.
Yeah.
I will have it again. And I thought about how do I want to feel the rest of this day? I need to do a lot of laundry because I have to change all this bedding and do the towels and I have things I need to do. Do I really need to eat right now? Like, no. So I chose how I wanted to feel later in the day. Feeling good is a powerful motivator. Not like I would have felt terrible if I'd have eaten it, but my point is that
Mindset-wise, you would have, though. You would have
I don't know
been
if I would have
disappointed,
because when I decide to open my window for something that's window worthy, I have zero guilt ever. I have no. I mean, I don't believe in having guilt. I have something. If I choose to have it, I've chosen to have it, and that's fine. But I felt better yesterday afternoon because I stuck to my normal window physically. I feel better when I wait until about 2 to open my window. Like right now, it's 2:30. I haven't opened my window yet. I feel amazing. But it's just
Would you
it's the way you chase feeling your best with your food choices and just how you live your life in general. You choose the things that make you feel good. Like I'm going on vacation, an 8-day trip with my college friends to Florida again this year. Last year, I opened my window a little wider than I normally would, and I do that on vacation, but not usually for 8 days.
Yeah.
So by the time I got back home, I was like, ugh, I just felt so, ugh. My clothes all still fit, but I just didn't feel, I was sluggish. So this year when I go back on that trip, I'm like, I'm not going to open my window quite so wide because I want to feel good. It's not because
Yeah.
I'm dieting or restricting. It's
Yeah,
because
and
I
I
want to
think
feel good.
Yeah, and this has been such a great episode because this is targeted at people who are perfectionists and
Yeah.
trying to always count everything and do everything and do everything right. And what you're saying is, even though you're very disciplined
Yeah.
and you have a window, which a lot of people would say, well, that's perfectionism. You're limiting yourself. You're saying, no, I'm not.
Right.
I'm choosing to feel good.
Yes.
And that allows me to let go of the stigma that I put on myself when I want to eat a cheeseburger or when I want to go on vacation. I am in control of what I'm doing without being OCD about it or
Exactly.
overly
Mhm.
perfectionist about it. And I think that's really important. And everyone has their own unique body. And what works for some people may not work for the other. And I think your solution is a great one for those that feel like they're being put in other people's boxes when
Right.
they're doing diets, and they feel like they're depressed from it and they're exhausted. And from a perfectionism standpoint, about trying to live up to other people's expectations, that doesn't fare well for our health either. It doesn't
No.
fare well for our stress response. We have to be able to have a little fun in our life because we are here for a reason. We need to be able to have vacations and holidays and have fun. And this allows for an option for people to play with that and have
Yeah.
fun with food and like food and feel good from food and find the value in food rather than restrict the food. So
Yeah, I mean, I believe we need to have, of course, physical satisfaction from what we're eating. We need the nutritional satisfaction of what we're
Mhm.
eating, but we also need an emotional satisfaction from what
Yeah.
we're eating. And you can never have like a dessert ever again for the rest of your life. No. Or
No.
it's,
No.
sorry, I can't eat that. No, I might say, I don't choose to eat that because I don't like the way it makes me feel. Like I'm kind of at the point where French fries at most restaurants make my stomach hurt now. If they've got
Yeah.
that yucky oil. And
Mine
so they
too.
make my stomach hurt. I don't want my
Mhm.
stomach to hurt.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
and it's not because I can't eat the fry. I don't want to. That,
I don't use the word can't anymore.
right.
I use choose. I choose not
I
to.
literally
I
don't want to.
prefer not to. I'm, rather than I can't or I won't or it is, as we wrap up, language is really important,
So
right? The
important.
words you use are so important when it comes to your health
Yeah.
and choosing, making a choice. You have shown that you can lose 80 pounds.
And keep it
And
off.
yes, and keep it off. And yes, it's going to require a lot of mindset shifts, a lot of love for yourself, a lot of discipline, but also from that, you get so much freedom.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you. I could honestly talk to you all day. You have so many lessons, and your books are amazing. If any of you have not checked them out, you have to check them out. It's JenStevens.com. She's everywhere. Okay, just type her in. You will find her, I promise. But I will put her stuff below. Not only do you provide a really great option for people to feel good, but you are also just truly, genuinely such a wonderful, warm person.
Oh, well, thank you. I love the work that I'm doing because, I mean, every time someone tells a story of how, I used to have fatty liver and now I don't, or I used to, whatever, and now I don't, or I had diabetes and now my A1C is normal. I'm just here teaching you how to work with your body and
Yeah.
listen to your body through the paradigm of intermittent fasting and then choosing the food choices that work for you. And, don't let other people tell you what you should be doing. Listen to your body. Fast, clean, eat the foods that make you feel great.
Mhm. Yeah.
Ignore the people telling you to buy things.
Yeah, I know.
Don't buy
I
the
know.
things.
Everyone says, "What's the secret?" I go, "I don't know. Eat right." And people go, "What?" I go, "Move your body.
Don't buy
Get
anything that
out
has
there,
intermittent
move,
fasting in the name of it.
sleep."
No intermittent fasting supplements, bars, no.
Yeah, no. No, not to mention they drain your bank account
Yeah.
tremendously. Like, my gosh, those bars. Even making your own costs a fortune. Like yeah, I'm more like, I guess you probably wouldn't agree to an apple. Well, during your window you could have an apple, but I'm like, there's so many other snacks out
Oh,
there
I
that
think
someone
apples
can
are
have
great
that
in your
don't
window.
cost
Yeah.
$5 a bar,
A big
Yes.
navel orange, that would make me happy.
What's that, maple orange?
Navel orange.
Oh, yes. Yes,
I love
absolutely.
oranges.
Well, you're going to Florida soon with your
Yeah.
girlfriends, hopefully, so lots of
Yeah.
navel oranges there. So, thank you so much, sweetheart,
Well,
for
thank
spending time
you.
with me. And, I know there's so much in your personal life too that we could have dived into that's given you so many lessons over life, but this is such a lesson and you're such a blessing to come on here and talk about something completely different than I've ever brought on the show. So
Oh, well,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much. And I love it.
Nothing makes me sadder than people who are succeeding. They're wildly succeeding with intermittent fasting, but maybe they're losing a half a pound a week. And they don't think they're succeeding. Or maybe they had been gaining weight rapidly for 5 years and now they've stopped gaining weight and they're just holding steady and they feel like they're failing. And I'm like, but wait a minute.
Mhm.
Also, you've cleared up a fatty liver in this time, but they feel like they're failing. And then there's also people who get so caught up in, but I need to lose 5 more pounds to get to my goal weight. And I will not be happy until I do. And so they're wildly successful.
Mhm.
They feel better. They're having health improvements. They have either stopped the gain or they are losing very slowly. And yet they still keep telling themselves, not fast enough, not good enough, the number's not low enough.
They move the goalpost. You
Mhm.
find the goal, you move the goalpost, and
They
that's the
do.
definition of a perfectionist,
And
and
they're like,
most
why is
people.
it not working for me? I'm like,
Yep.
well, let's unpack that just a bit.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny because if I ask people, "Are you a perfectionist?" "Oh, no, 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 no. Perfectionists are crazy people, right, that do everything." No, perfectionists are people that move the goalpost, and they
Right.
don't take a moment to stop with love and gratitude and
Yeah.
appreciate the journey that they've been on this far and where they are in their story. You write books. Nobody's gonna read a book that's perfect. There
No.
has to be stories of up and downs and, perceived failures and how those lead to success, and perfectionism is moving your goalpost and never being satisfied with where you are. There's a benefit in obviously goal setting. That trait can be beneficial in some ways, but it can also be your hindrance to success. The things that you think make you successful could actually be the things that are harming you.
Right. And just you're never going to your body is never going to be perfect enough
Never.
if you are focused on that versus living the lifestyle, whatever that might be, that feels good. We like to say, relax into the process
Mhm.
and stop like trying so hard with all of that urgency.
What's Yoda's thing? Like do not try.
Right.
Like there's
Do or don't do.
just don't try, just
Just do it.
do it. And find the lesson and the growth opportunity in everything. And that's how
Exactly.
we let go of perfectionism, and we take the drive that we have to make us truly successful in whatever, is realize that each goalpost you hit is actually a
Mhm.
success.
Yeah,
And even though it may not be the one that's miles down the road, it's a success,
yeah,
right? It takes time to
exactly.
get to your destination, and to be honest, once you find your destination, you may learn that you could eat even better, or you could eat even cleaner, but
Because you
that
want
doesn't
to.
discount where you came. Yeah, you're gonna set a next level of success for you, and that's okay. But yeah, I think that's a really important point, Jen, is really appreciating where we are
Mhm.
right now. Oh, goodness. Today, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. What happens tomorrow is up to you. So
Yeah,
don't beat yourself up over where you are today, because today is
exactly.
important.
Yeah,
It is important. It's on my wall.
there you go.
Thank you.